Am I actually doing an episode on manifesting? I guess I am. I call it magic. I call it locking into a desired reality stream. But I think a lot of people would call what I'm going to describe in this episode manifesting. Today I'm going to tell you a story about how I managed my intention, thoughts, emotions, imagination, and energy through a tricky situation. I'm going to walk you through this real-life example of manifesting a desired outcome, and I'll explain all the techniques I used at each step. So if you're ready to step out of manifesting or magic as theory and dive into the gritty, unpredictable world of magic and practice, you're in the right place. You gorgeous, powerful person, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome, welcome. I'm Amara Strand, and I'm delighted to have you here today. And I'm also delighted to be here myself today, talking to you from my cozy Bangkok apartment. Because a week ago, I wasn't sure if I'd make it. You see, a couple of weeks ago, I had to leave Thailand because my visa expired. It was my birthday, so I decided to go to Malaysia for a week, celebrate with some fabulous food, visit the butterfly gardens, and then return to Bangkok, where, ideally, the immigration officer would just stamp me in. But here's the thing. There are no hard and fast rules for getting stamped in on a visa exemption, which just means that it's totally up to the individual immigration officer. And if they decide to reject you, you really have no recourse. They can reject you for any reason or for no reason, and then you have to quickly get the next flight to some other country because you can't stay in the airport and you can't enter the country. And normally people just pass through without incident, and I've never had a problem with it. But when I entered a few months ago, I was shocked when the immigration officer pulled me aside and gave me the third degree. It really seemed like she wasn't going to stamp me in. I wasn't breaking any rules, I wasn't overstaying, and she finally did stamp me in, but the experience was unsettling. To have something so important decided at the very last minute, at the discretion of a stranger, basically a coin toss. And just to add a little spice to this, I was traveling during a Mars-Uranus conjunction in my fourth house. If there are any astro mages listening, I know they'll immediately grok why I felt this warranted magical intervention. So a couple weeks ago, when I was packing a bag for my short trip to Malaysia, I decided to cast a spell. Now, we probably have a different idea of what casting a spell means, but I think by the time I walk you through the steps, you'll understand why I name it so. As I tell this story, I'm going to highlight the primary steps, and if you want to see these written in list form, you can find the link to that in the description box below. And if you have questions about specific steps, you can ask them in the comments below. So the very first step is this. You need to decide to do it. This seems obvious, but it's not. It's the foundation of your manifesting, so you need to get this first step right. I don't go casting spells or moving life streams for just anything. There has to be a clear and meaningful reason why it's necessary to cast or manifest. If there are other mundane ways to bring about my desired outcome, I use them. And if you're honest, there usually are. For instance, there have been other times when I knew I was going to enter Thailand multiple times in a year, so I applied for and was issued a 6-month visa in advance. But applying for a visa wasn't an option for me this time. You might think, hey, if you're a skilled manifestor or magician, why wouldn't you just use magic all the time? I think this represents the fantasy version of manifesting or magic versus the mature and experienced understanding of magic. If you're using magic or manifesting for every little thing, it's usually because you're lazy, or you've developed an ego around being magical, or you haven't invested in learning mundane skills or discipline to make things happen through the ordinary channels. This isn't a judgment, but it's important to be uncompromisingly honest with yourself. Are you using magic to avoid work or to make up for a lack of preparation? Are you using magic to avoid developing competency in some area of life? That might sound a little harsh, but we have to be honest with ourselves and watch out for these tendencies, because if we give in to them, using magic will actually diminish us rather than expand and deepen our presence and engagement with life. So let's return to my situation. I was leaving all my stuff in my Bangkok apartment to take a short trip to Malaysia. My clothes, computers, cameras, hard drives, documents, everything. I had tickets to fly out of Bangkok back to the US in a month. If they didn't stamp me in, where would I go without my stuff? How would I pack up my apartment? What would happen to all my things? How would I be able to fly back to the US from Bangkok if they didn't let me in? And there was no other way to tip the scales in my favor. There wasn't enough time in Malaysia to apply for a visa. So I was very clear on what my options were and why I was casting toward this outcome and what was at stake. So the first step is to decide and to be very clear about why you are using magic. The next step was to create an anchor to the desired outcome. This was really easy in this situation because I was already experiencing my desired outcome. I was physically in the space and condition of my target. What I wanted was to be back in my apartment, only at a specific future date. So I went into my bedroom to create an anchor. I chose my bedroom because it's the most intimate space for me and the room that has the highest saturation of my energy. I stood at the end of my bed and brought up an energy sphere the size of my room to contain my magic. I always create a container for my magic. I decided the anchor would be a huge magnet. You know, the classic U-shape, red with silver tips. I made this magnet life-size, just a bit bigger than my own body. I visualized this magnet hovering in front of me, vivid. I could feel its presence, its weight, and power. Then I created a specific energy strip in my body that spanned from my heart down to my lower belly. I programmed the huge magnet to bring me home. I used those words, bring me home. And then I matched the magnet to the energy strip in my body so that the magnet was fully locked into this energy. It was magnetized to bring me physically back to this very space in my bedroom on a certain date. The feeling of that magnetic connection is intense and ecstatic. The huge magnet is activated now, and I can feel the power and the pull from the center of my body. And now I visualize my desired outcome. I visualize being right back here, standing in front of this magnet on the future date. I feel everything. What the air in the room feels like, the temperature, the smell, the weight of it. I hear all the familiar sounds, the rain, the birds outside, the neighborhood. I feel how safe and at home I am right here in my own bedroom. I feel the bottom of my bare feet on the wood floor, and I visualize feeling all these things in the future date. I'm matching up all the feelings, the senses of this place and time with the future. What I'm doing is tuning into my current frequency and then reaching forward to find the exact life stream that matches it at the future date. And I'm using the magnet as an anchor and a focus to aid me in maintaining that bridge or connection so that I stay tuned and oriented toward the exact stream that contains my intended outcome. I generate the complete immersive visualization of returning at the future date, of coming into my room and standing before the magnet, of feeling the magnet actually pull me from the center of my body into the bedroom. And we are united at this future date, which is ecstasy, because our energies have been entangled, connected, and we've been pulled toward each other the whole time. And now the pull is complete. It's satisfied. And there's only laughter and joy and ecstasy. I say to the magnet, I am home. The sound of gratitude pours out of my being and floods the room, fills the room. I'm not grateful for the outcome. I am gratitude itself. There is no object of gratitude. There is no separation. I am gratitude itself. That's all I am now. And the sound, the pure, luxurious note is carried out on powerful waves from the center of my body, pouring out of me the song, the pure sound of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. I am this. We are this. This completes my visualization, and I lock into this magnet. I encode this exact outcome into the magnet. My whole being is now attuned and oriented and facing toward this life stream, this outcome, this moment in time, in the corresponding life stream at the future date. And the magnet will draw me to it. It will keep me attuned to it. And it will organize and conduct all the details that are necessary to clear the way for this outcome. Remember, in the last podcast, I talked about the concept of orientation. And here it is again. You'll definitely want to get good at calibrating your orientation. So with that all done, I get down to some practical planning. This is when I imagine being at the critical point, which in this case is the immigration desk. And I imagine things going wrong. And then I create a plan for how I will handle it. What will I say? What kind of supporting material will I need to make my case and influence the officer to stamp me in? So I imagine myself walking up to the immigration booth. The officer looks at my passport and frowns. She starts to question me, and it's clear from her tone, from her body language, that she's not just going to stamp me through. I play out the scene in vivid detail. I see myself staying calm and open. My aura is radiant with genuine warmth and patience. My body is relaxed. Here I'm visualizing being in an unwanted, stressful situation, and yet remaining open, which is to say I haven't contracted into fear or defensiveness. I'm rehearsing remaining in the uncontracted state. I explain that I'm only in town for 3 weeks, and I pull out a printout of my flight confirmation, showing that I'm flying back to the US in less than a month. I wait calmly as she considers this. She takes a long time looking over the flight confirmation, and she seems unmoved by this. She starts to press me again, and in the same calm and warm manner, I pull out a doctor's appointment slip and tell her I have a doctor's appointment in 2 weeks in Bangkok, and I just need to go to that appointment, and then I'm flying home. I'm calm and confident. I'm giving her what she needs to give herself permission to let down her guard and stamp me in. She considers this information, looks at my documents, and says, "Okay." I hear the sound of the stamp hitting my passport. I thank her, take my passport, and pass through. Now listen, because this is important. This is the only time I will visualize this. This is the one and only time I will run through a challenge scenario and prepare for it. I only do this once, and then I close the energy on it and let it go. I don't hold on to it as some kind of safety net. I let it go. But it's important that I do it and imagine vividly and in detail, practicing just this once, not only what I will say and in what order, but also practicing what my body will feel like, what kind of energy will be filling my energy sphere. It's your responsibility to do this once and to be prepared. But if you find that you're going back to this scene and practicing it over and over again, you need to understand that you're not doing it so you'll be prepared. You tell yourself that, but it's not true. If you're returning to the scene and running it repeatedly, it means you're not managing your thoughts, feelings, and imagination. You're not self-regulating. You've lost authority over your mental apparatus, and you've allowed yourself to host thoughts and images that induce doubt, which leads to anxiety. And to self-soothe, you run through the backup plan repeatedly. So there are two problems with this. One is obviously you've lost control of your mind. You're no longer the authority of your own inner circumstances. And how do you think you're going to control or influence your outer circumstances with magic when you can't even manage your internal circumstances? Really think about that. The second problem with doing this is that you're now investing your energy and imagination into this unwanted scenario. In my case, what I really want is just to get stamped in without being challenged. So I certainly don't want to be investing into a version of reality where there are obstacles to that. And that's why I do it only once. I do it once and I do it fully, and then I close that energy down and reorient myself entirely to my desired outcome, which in this case is anchored by my magnet. So that's what I'll be focusing on, not just the image of the magnet, but the actual physical pull in the center of my body that's bringing me home. Another thing I need to do to prepare is to actually get my tickets printed out and go to the hospital and get an appointment slip. You don't need an appointment slip to go to the doctor here, but I asked them for one so I could have that piece of paper to offer the immigration officer. Something tangible for her to help her make the decision to stamp me in. I put these in my travel case and that's it. I let it go. I've done my practical preparations. Now I'm off to Kuala Lumpur and I have a great time there. It's my birthday and I've rented a condo on a very high floor, so I've got an amazing view over the city. I was there almost a week and the entire time I was energetically connected to my anchor. It's not like I had to spend time concentrating on the anchor, nothing like that. When I created that magnetic pull, the pairing of my energy with the anchor, I created something real. It's real and I feel that pull 24/7. The feeling is visceral. It's pulling me back to my room. And I know that it's working because I can feel it all the time, in my chest and down to my belly. This energy strip is fully magnetized to the anchor in my bedroom. This means it's also organizing and coordinating the circumstances to get me back to my room. This is important. I don't need to think about all the little things that need to happen just right in order to get me back home. I don't need to focus on getting a nice immigration officer who's in a stellar mood. I don't need to even think about the scene of me going through immigration at all. I just need to remain magnetized to the anchor in my room. Notice that I didn't create an anchor at the immigration booth. I'm not making it about that moment for two reasons. One is that imagining myself at the immigration booth is actually stressful. Even if I imagine it going perfectly, I can't really generate a compelling, emotional, and tactile matrix around that, whereas I can absolutely generate intense, positive, and vivid feelings and sensations about being in my room. The second is that what I truly want is to be back in my room. That is the accurate, desired outcome. For instance, if it takes overcoming a challenge by the customs officer, as long as they do finally stamp me in, it doesn't really matter. The details don't matter. The process doesn't matter. What I want is to be back in my room. I'm clear about that. So that's why the focus and the anchor are placed there. Because this anchor is so visceral and vivid, there is no space for doubt or anxiety to creep in. There's also no need for certainty either. Consider that for a moment. I don't need to generate the feeling of certainty. I don't need to convince myself of anything. You'll notice that everything I'm giving power to is about images and emotions and physical sensations. I don't need to talk myself into being sure about it. In fact, I am sidestepping my mind entirely. I'm sidestepping the language application, the part of the mind that talks to itself. I've created a visceral, energetic, and emotional anchor in my body, and that's what my focus rests on. Imagine a heavily pregnant woman resting her hand on her belly. If you've ever been pregnant or been around pregnant women, you know they do this without thinking about it. They're not thinking about their baby when they do this. The baby is the body's central focus, and it is an ever-present process. And a woman is naturally magnetized and oriented around both the process in their body and the outcome. So a woman instinctively rests her hand on her pregnant belly. The meaning of that action can't really be translated into words. And that's exactly what this magnetic coupling feels like for me. It's a deeper reality than thinking or probability or certainty or doubt. And throughout my time in Kuala Lumpur, I'm sort of filled with the pregnancy of my magic, so to speak. Yeah, this account is full of womanly feelings, and I'd love to hear what it feels like when a man is doing this kind of magic or manifesting. I mean, it's the same thing, but it would be interesting to hear the way a man experiences and describes it. Now, over the years, I've developed a high level of authority or mastery over my mind, emotions, energy, and imagination. And that's what allows me to do this as smoothly, as naturally as I'm describing. If I didn't yet have this level of personal authority over my inner circumstances, I can totally imagine a different experience. First of all, I'd have this kind of underlying anxiety about the situation. It would just be lurking there beneath the surface. And I'd try to keep it from popping up by distracting myself, which is easy to do when you're on vacation in another country. And I'd probably pack my schedule with stuff to do. I'd keep myself busy. But you can't keep yourself perpetually distracted. An untrained mind is always lying in wait. So eventually, the anxiety would break out of its subterranean confines and ambush you. You know what it feels like to be ambushed by your anxious mind, when all of a sudden it's just there, filling your energy sphere, taking over your thoughts and your imagination. And you're suddenly panicked because you're imagining all the terrible things that will happen if you can't get stamped in. You imagine each and every terrible thing and feel helpless and freaked out. As if the terrible thing is actually happening, you'll feel all that stress and panic in your body, even though at the moment you're still on vacation and nothing is happening. I mean, I'm taking a nice little birthday trip to a city I love, but if I didn't have self-authority, I know I'd be imagining being stuck at the airport with some surly, immovable immigration officer telling me to get the hell out of the country, and then I'd imagine trying to book a flight to another country right there at the last minute from my phone, and then trying to get accommodation, and then trying to get my luggage because the luggage actually comes out after you clear customs, and so on. Every stressful, horrible thing, I'd imagine each of them one by one, and my body and energy would react as if I was actually there facing those horrible situations. And so to soothe myself, to try to get myself out of this miserable anxiety loop, I'd probably try to talk myself out of it. I tell myself that it's all going to be okay, and probability is on my side, and I shouldn't worry about it, and I might message a friend and mention my situation and that I'm worried about it, and then I'd let them talk me out of my worry. We've all done this, and in doing this, I'm just outsourcing this job of talking myself out of my negative thought loops, and I'm employing my friend to help me bring my anxiety down a few levels. And I would be relieved because I do have such good friends, and they know just what to say to ease my fears. I'd feel better for a while, and I'd tell myself, sure, see, I'm not the only one who says it's going to be okay. My friend also says it's going to be okay. But that doesn't last, does it? As the days go by and the time to fly back gets closer, my anxiety would start to ramp up. My autopilot would just turn on, and it would have these flashing red lights, the warning light that says, oh my God, something terrible is about to happen. This is an emergency. The what-if thought loop of doom would probably just get worse as the time got closer. What if they don't let me in? What if I can't get my luggage? What if? So then I would start visualizing being at the immigration desk and practicing what I'd say. I'd do that visualization over and over, almost compulsively, because it would give me a false feeling of control, like, okay, I'm freaking out and experiencing this unbearable anxiety, and I need to feel like I'm doing something about it. It always makes you feel better if you believe you're at least doing something. This is just how we're made. So I'd go through that scenario over and over, focusing on getting this immigration officer to please let me through. And I would feel a little better, a little more prepared. But of course, none of that is true or effective. And I'd be totally orienting myself in the wrong way, basically toward a confrontation. The anxiety would ramp up until finally I got off the plane and finally found myself at the dreaded moment of truth. Keep it together, Strand. Stay cool. Oh my God, can you even imagine? I know you can, because we've all been through stuff like this. And that's what it means to have authority over your inner circumstances. I talk a lot about self-mastery. I teach self-mastery, and that sounds great. I mean, who doesn't want to be their own authority, right? But when you imagine someone who has mastery over themselves, what does that look like? I mean, what the hell is it good for? What can you actually do with self-mastery? Self-mastery sounds like a cool spiritual or self-development aspiration. It sounds kind of heroic, but have you really considered what it would mean in real life, in your life? When you develop clarity, when you stay grounded, when you have authority over your inner circumstances, what does that look like? And what are you going to do with that? What can you do with that, other than just be super chill and give off Yoda vibes? Well, in this real life example, I'm using my authority to cast my spell and then not waver from it. I can be true to a thing because I don't allow my system to create waves of chaos and dissonance that counteract my intention, that waste my energy and pull me off my intended orientation. Does that sound heroic? I imagine that sounds very simple, basic, and perhaps boring. I mean, I'm not shooting rainbows out of my third eye or anything here. What I'm describing is just getting from point A to point B in uncertain circumstances without wasting my holiday being freaked out, without creating a ton of internal friction. In fact, if this story didn't have the manifesting magic component, it would be super dull, because what I'm describing is the absence of something, not the addition of something, the absence of inner friction, the absence of unnecessary suffering, the absence of confusion and inner drama. Even though it may not be heroic or exciting, developing self-mastery is cool because you get to finally be your own authority, finally have the last say in what thoughts you host, what feelings you nurture, and what images and scenarios you allow to play out on the sacred screen of your imagination. But that's not the end of it. It's just the beginning. You get to go out and live. You get to use your human vehicle rather than allow it to be used while you're just kind of dragged along for the ride. So back to my story. I had a very enjoyable trip. I flew home, got in the immigration line, and as soon as I saw her face, the face of my beautiful immigration agent, I was overjoyed. She was radiating sweetness and warmth and relaxation. I've actually never had an immigration agent like this before. They're also locked down and grim, severe even, but she was like a slice of birthday cake. And I just knew I was going home. Oh my God, it's just pure ecstasy. When your inner reality perfectly matches your outer reality, when they click into each other and you can feel it that moment, it's so energizing. It's as though all the drag and weight and lag of the material reality disappears for a moment. It's just gone, and everything is flowing without any impediments or obstructions. I was all smiles, smiling from the very center of my being out into the world. I got home, dragged my luggage up the stairs, and finally I was standing in my room right in front of the magnet. When the magnet finally completed its connection with me, finally clicked in and joined with that matching energy strip in my body, it was like an explosion of energy. That energy was gratitude. Not gratitude for a thing, not gratitude for an outcome, but I was gratitude. There was nothing in my being other than gratitude, and it exploded out of me in waves, just delicious, magical waves. I felt the wood floor beneath my bare feet, and I felt the air on my skin and the smell and the temperature. I heard the familiar sounds of birds and the whir of the air conditioner. My inner and outer realities were one pure ecstasy. The magnet was reintegrated into my being, fully returned to my base energy along with the energy sphere I initially put up to contain it. I went out and did some errands, and on my way home, I bought a large garland of jasmine and marigold. These garlands are used as Buddhist offerings. It smelled absolutely divine, and I put it next to my bed and slept enveloped in that heavenly aura. So this story is half about manifesting, and I'm giving you one example of the process of manifesting. There are many different ways to do magic and manifesting. The other half is about self-mastery and what it looks like in real life. If you take up that calling to master yourself, to accept authority over your human vehicle, then at first you'll aspire towards that. You'll work towards that by learning techniques, by really paying attention, observing how your system works, engaging yourself with radical honesty. You'll discover so much about the mechanics of your mind and emotions and energy. And eventually what you'll find is that you become one with your philosophy, one with your mastery, one with your understanding. You'll find you're not separate from it. You're no longer trying to attain it. You're no longer just thinking about it. You become the embodiment of it. Your life is an ongoing, natural demonstration of it. And of course, it's integrated into everything you do. It's not a spiritual thing. It's a human thing, a life thing. Self-mastery isn't for special people, for spiritual people. It's for all people, and it's totally within reach. It's not so much adding to what you already are, but rather you find yourself recognizing and removing from your system things that were never really you to begin with. Developing self-mastery hasn't added to me in any way. It's just removed everything that obstructs, hides, or distorts my true nature. If you'd like to know more about self-mastery, head over to my website. You'll find the link below in the description box. I teach a beginner's course on mastering your thoughts, emotions, and energy, as well as a more advanced program specifically about maintaining your authority and emotional clarity in relationships, because that's always tricky. And so what about your magic and manifesting? I'd love to hear about your own recent experiences. Did you use a process similar to mine or something very different? Did it work out? And if not, what will you be doing differently next time? As always, thanks for being here. If you enjoyed today's talk, please take a moment to leave me a like. And remember, you're radiant and powerful. I wish you well always, and I'll talk to you again soon.